and we're going to take the 3 centering rings. And they're called centering rings because this is the motor tube. It happens to be 29 millimeters. Rocket motors for the hobby are designated in millimeters and stuff as far as diameter. And so now what we need to do is be able to center this inside the body tube. And these are called centering rings that get glued to the motor tube, and then we'll glue the whole motor tube assembly inside the rocket. And so what we're going to do first is we're going to put a couple of attachments on here. That when we have the motor in there and that charge goes off, we need something on here to hold the motor in place. We don't want this motor to come shooting out of the rocket and losing it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to put a little thing in here, and it's called a blind nut. And I'll take pictures and put them at the end of the video and stuff. And what it is it's like a nut, but it's got a built-in washer to it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take one of the centering rings and we're going to glue this into the little tiny hole that's there. Okay? Before we do that, this same centering ring, we're going to glue a little gray, dark gray piece of plastic to it. And what this piece of plastic is going to do is we're going to be putting a screw into this, because a screw into the cardboard wouldn't be very strong at all. And so we're going to glue this inside the motor, and we're going to remember where it is, and then we're going to go ahead and build the rest of the stuff. So one other thing that you might need is an ink pen, and I have one right here. And so what I'm going to do is right opposite of where this hole is, I'm going to draw a line right here. I'm going to carry that line over the edge and put that line on the other side, so that when I glue this in place, right in the middle of that line, that from the bottom of this I can tell exactly where that is. Okay? So the 2 little super glue jobs that we're going to do is we're going to glue in the blind nut, and it has a bolt or a screw on it already, and we're going to leave that in place so that we can hold this and not glue it to our hands. And then we're also going to put 1 or 2 drops, probably just 1, on this. And a critical thing about this one is I don't want it overhanging past the edge. And so when I place it, I'm going to have a few seconds to get it up a little bit close to the edge, but I don't want it hanging over because it will never fit inside the tube. So I've test fitted the 2 pieces that I have. I'm going to get my super glue. So I'm going to put 1 drop on here. I can't put the lid on this one yet. And then I'm going to push that down as far as it'll go. And then I'm going to take the screw out. The only thing the screw was doing for me was giving me a little handle so I didn't glue that blind nut to my hand. I'm going to turn it over and just push it down, make sure it's all the way bottomed out. I'm going to come back, I'm going to put drop on each side of the line. Now I can put the lid on. And I'm going to make sure that this is not past the edge. And so I'm going to work my way right up to the edge. And right there, I'm going to push down on it. For about 10 seconds. While we're doing that, we're going to need some masking tape. Okay? So we're going to set that aside. The other 2 centering rings have holes in them too, and all we're going to do with those holes is put a little piece of tape on them, because we're going to use the JB weld and we're going to fill in those holes. We don't need them. Okay? So if we go back to the motor tube, we're going to see 3 different rings on here, or groups of lines. There's 1 up here, there's 1 down near the end, and there's 1 at the very end. And what we're going to do is we're going to be gluing these 3 rings in those exact same places. And they have to be exact, and they're already marked because they line up exactly with the slot in the tube. When we get to the point where we're attaching our fins will be setting in those slots right between those rings. So you can see that it's important that those rings are glued exactly in the right spot. Okay? So we're going to test fit the 3 rings. We're going to slide this down. On the line there, on the line there. So that one's good. We're going to take this other one. Line it up. We're good there. We're good there. A little bit out there. So we're just going to move that around so that we know what we're doing. This last one is really easy to do because all I'm going to do is leave it against the table and I'm going to push it down and it bottoms itself out. If it's a little rocky like that, we can just spin it a little bit and that's what we're going to do. And if we get that fin back, these aren't glued yet, that my fin will have just a little bit of play between those rings. Okay? So now what we're going to do is we're going to pull the bottom bulkhead or centering ring off and push the other 2 towards my hand. Okay? We're going to open up the super glue, and these are a structural part of this. We don't want this tube to shoot through the rocket and not stay put. So we're going to take and both super glue and JB weld them. And the last step we do in this video is JB welding them. So I put about 5 or 6 drops on there. I'll put one more. I'm going to do this other end. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then I'm going to slide that up to the line. I'm going to spin it and make sure, because we're trying to put these rings on here perpendicular to the tube. So if I want, I can stick my finger in here and I can roll this tube. That one's right on the money. Not much I can do with that one. And this last one we're going to do is we're going to take the plastic bag that we had, because we're going to glue this one a little bit differently. We're going to make sure that our screw block and our blind nut is sticking up. We're going to put this in here, and then we're going to glue this in place. Okay, and then we're going to set this aside for now. Put the lid on. We're going to get the baffle with the shot cord or the Kevlar cord on it, the short brown tube. And then there's another smaller diameter brown tube that has a couple of slots built into it. What we're going to do with that is we're going to put this as a mount for this, and it's only for us to glue with, and that will all come out. What it's doing is it's holding this baffle ring in a certain place. It wants to kind of move around in there, so we're just holding it in place, and then once it's all built, then that piece will be discarded. Okay, but all the pieces fit together. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get our epoxy out and we're going to mix some epoxy. So we're going to take one of the little mixing sticks, our cardboard, and the 2 tubes of JB Weld. Okay, doesn't matter which color we start with. We're going to start at one line, keep the size about the same as I pull it towards the other line. Kind of looks like the size of a big caterpillar. Make sure we put the tops on right. While I'm doing this, the plywood pieces, I bought the plywood from a company called Aircraft Spruce. And then I had a friend that owns a business that uses CNC routing machines that cuts out all these parts, all the plywood parts he cut out on a computer. And the business name is FX Cutting in Novato, California. So we're going to put those away. And as you can see that they're the same length. This one's a little fatter only because it's been laying out there a little bit longer. And then we're going to take our mixing stick and we're going to mix them together until it's a nice uniform gray color. And again, I'm taking a guess at how much of this we actually need. When you watch the video, I'll put a little subtitle there if I happen to be wrong. Okay, all the white's gone, all the black's gone, and it's all the same color. So this epoxy has about a 20 to 25 minute working time, and it takes 12 to 24 hours for it to set up. So I've already test fitted my pieces. Nothing needed to be sanded or anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a very little bit of this and I'm going to put it on inside one of the tubes. And it's about a 1/4 inch wide, maybe the width of this steer stick, and I'm just smoothing it out. It's not very thick. The amount I'm picking up each time with the stick is a small green pea size. Eat your vegetables. Just set that aside so I don't put my arm in it. It's a very thick glue, more than honey. So then we're going to set this up that the little G10 fiberglass thing goes in the little grooves in here so that it sits nice and flush. And then I'm going to take the glued end up and I'll pass it in there. Make sure I don't put any glue on my shock cord. And then I'm going to pull it down evenly. I can give it a little spin if I want. Just smoothing it out. And we need to remove some of the epoxy that's coming over the edge here. So what I'm going to do is pull this off, put this on here, Take another piece of the paper towel. And what I don't want is any glue hanging over the edge there, because this has to slide inside that tube. If I leave it like it is, I'm going to have to sand that off. So all I'm going to do is take this paper towel and I'm going to wipe it up, fold the paper towel a little bit, wipe it up, anywhere that it's coming over. Okay, now I'm going to push this down to make sure it's all where it's supposed to be. And then I'm going to set that aside. Okay? Take the paper towel that has the epoxy and JB weld on it, get rid of it. We don't need it on our clothes or anything. So the next thing we're going to glue together is the larger brown cardboard tube called the coupler. And what we're going to glue to it is the thicker, almost solid plywood bulkhead. And it has a hole in it. And so what we're going to do is the same sort of thing, but we need the 3/4 that you guys supplied. And what we're going to do is we're going to put those quarters in a triangle pattern. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put this centering ring right in there. And we're going to be sliding this over the top. What those quarters do is it makes it, let's see if I can get this off. It leaves a little lip right here, because we're going to come back and we're going to fill that in another step. This is part of the payload bay, and structurally it needs to support this way. And so what I'm going to do is we're going to come back and we're going to put some more epoxy on this edge so that it's very strong. So that's what the quarters do. It just provides that little bit of lip all the way around. Okay? We're going to take our other bag and we're going to set our quarters on this. We don't want to glue it to this paper towel. Okay, so that's ready. That's ready. And that's going to be ready. Same thing. We're going to take the glue, the epoxy, and we're going to smear it around about the width inside that is, that the stir stick is. If there's any epoxy on the outside of this tube, we're going to go ahead and wipe it off right now. Otherwise, we're going to have to sand it, and it's very hard to sand. In the garbage. Okay, we're going to go over here. We're going to place we have the 3/4. We're going to take the bulkhead, we're going to set right in the middle of that, and then we're going to take this and set it right over the top and push down. I'm going to hold it with one hand. I'm going to take this stick and I'm going to concave or any glue down there. I'm going to smear it around, make sure that bulkhead is all the way down. Going to move that out of the way. we're kind of running out of epoxy, so 1.5 inches wasn't enough. We're going to do another 1.5 inches. So we're going to go from one line, put the lid on. I'm going to grab another paper towel. We're going to do some black. Put the lids on. We're going to mix this. We can mix it with any of the other leftover epoxy. Okay, we're going to go back to the motor mount. The super glue is dried up. It's not very strong, but it did its job. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take and we're going to be putting epoxy around this edge, and we're using the roundness to form a nice fillet. And we're just going to pull it around both sides. We're going to fill in the holes that we taped over. If you start getting too much epoxy on your stick, or it's in the wrong places, use a piece of paper towel, clean the stick up, in the garbage. So about a pea size on there, I'm going to kind of pull it along, and it's just kind of like I'm painting with it. And what that roundness of the stir stick does is it leaves just the right amount to glue everything together. So with just one dab, I was almost able to get all the way around. And if you glue over the tape, it doesn't matter. We'll never see this when it's in the rocket. I'm going to do the other ends now because I don't want to get any on my hand. We'll wait till that is the last step. Because of the screw block that we put in here, you might have to push a little bit epoxy in there. Don't worry about getting epoxy on the screw block. We're going to come around here by the blind nut. We'll get a little bit on that. What we don't want to do is get any on the threads or down in the hole. So the next video is going to be putting this into the rocket and stuff, and there'll be a list of stuff that you need. And all I'm going to do is do this all the way around, both sides of every ring. If there's a place that you can't get to because the screw block or something's in the way, don't worry, that will be fine. Now, a lot of these techniques are kind of a combination between high power and stuff. And so we're actually building a model rocket, and this rocket would be completely capable of doing a level 1 certification flight. There's 2 national organizations that ensure and promote hobby and high power rockets and model rockets. One is called the National Association of Model Rocketry, National Association of Rocketry. Another one is called Tripoli Rocketry Association. And both very good organizations. So one more. So if I was to guess, I would say you would need amount of epoxy. 4 inches would be good. And having to mix it up twice doesn't seem to be a problem. So we put a nice coat of epoxy there, JB Weld. This doesn't have to be pretty. We're not going to be looking at it. It's just a structural, it's given it strength. I'm going to go ahead and stop the video here in a minute. And the only thing I could say is make sure that you're gluing parts together that you know go together. If you're not sure, watch the video. If it's unclear what I'm trying to get across, have your instructor or your teacher get a hold of me and have them send me an email. And it's much easier to wait to do something than it is to try to get something unglued. And I'll be done. Right now. Okay. So there's no epoxy there, so we can set that to dry. We don't want any of these parts to get hit or knocked over or whatever. We can save the stir sticks. I think you have plenty with the 4 that are in here. You can clean this up. We can reuse it. The cardboard, there's plenty of cardboard, but we'll go ahead and clean that and save that too. Alright? So if you have any questions, have your instructors get a hold of me. Thank you.